Welcome, everyone, to episode 3 of the Get Back Guys podcast. I'm Kyle. Right here to my left is Nick, and right here to my right is Alex.
Go Birds.
Go Spurs, go.
Playing right now. Spurs are playing right now. I can't believe I'm missing the game. Back, boys.
And for our special guest, we got our buddy Jared, who is a fellow Seahawk fan, which I absolutely love. Jared, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, man?
Yeah, well, it's like you said, I'm a Seahawks fan. I had to get on here so you weren't going to be outnumbered by all these Seahawks haters anymore.
I appreciate
even the playing field a little bit. But yeah, I'm a Seahawks fan, like Kyle said. Been one since I was a little guy back in the bad days with Mike Holmgren. But yeah, and then I'm a Seattle sports fan across the board. Also, Kyle, that reminds me, I absolutely loved the Seattle Kraken logo that you taped to yourself last episode.
I mean, when you got a new Seattle team, you got to rep them in any way you can. I wasn't able to get their merch.
100%. So, yeah, I guess that's the quote-unquote expertise I bring to the table tonight is my Seahawks fandom. So we'll see what that gets me.
Well, yeah, I think you know a lot more than even the rest of us would, but we'll just see how that goes. We'll see if that's true.
Yeah, for the viewers, Jared and I worked together. We worked in a little sports shop selling jerseys. Used to have many conversation. That's why we put you high on the list of making you one of the first guests on this show, because you and I have gotten into it before. We need to get into it again.
We're not new to this.
No, many a conversation. All right.
So, yeah, I think since we keep talking Seahawks between Jared and I, we need to start off with some Seahawk news because that makes the most sense. Jamal Adams from the Jets, the best safety in the NFL, got traded to the Seattle Seahawks for quite a bit, but, you know, I'm still excited. I'm still excited about it anyway.
Best safety, clearly. You've never heard of Rodney McLeod. That's true.
I'm not even going to dignify that with a response. But, yeah, I love the trade. I absolutely love it. Kyle, you know I texted you the minute I found out about it, actually. Yeah. So I'm pretty psyched about it. And it's I think, the piece that Seattle's team as a whole, but especially their defense needed. That was kind of the one missing spot that I felt like needed filled, and they addressed it. So we'll see.
Yeah, let's just talk about the details of this trade anyway, just to get some, in case if people don't know about this. The New York Jets, they got sent over a 2021 and 2022 first-round picks, along with a 2021 third-round pick, and Seattle's safety Bradley McDougald, while the Seahawks got Jamal Adams, but they also received a 2022 fourth-round pick. So while the Seahawk fan and Jared is saying, like, that's great, that's awesome, like, that's exactly what we needed. Some people may disagree here, or maybe they do agree. I don't know. What if one of you guys, Nick or Alex, want to?
Yeah, I'll take it over. At least I can talk about the Jets' perspective, too. They kind of killed this trade, I think, all things considered. It's always a bummer to trade a superstar away, and no doubt Jamal Adams is a superstar at the safety position. But, you know, when he was out the door for months now, like it seems like we've just been waiting for him to get traded. So for them to get 2 first-round picks, flip, a third and a fourth, and then also get a starting caliber safety, I think it's pretty unreal. So I think they did, like if I was giving them a grade, I'd give them an A, because when you have a player out the door already, like I cannot believe they got this much for him, to be honest. Like they got more than the Bears did for Khalil Mack, because they also got a player back, which is pretty insane because Khalil Mack plays a more important position. So I think on the Seattle side of things, if I was a Seahawk fan, I would obviously be psyched because getting a star player is always amazing. But I also am a little nervous about the 2 first-round picks being gone. Even though Seattle doesn't have a great track record of first-round picks, the value there for paying a player such low money to even get mediocre production is a huge thing in the NFL, and we've obviously seen that with a lot of the Super Bowl teams over the last few years, getting there through rookie contracts, filling out their roster. So that makes me pretty nervous. So I'd give them like a B minus, because I feel like Jamal Adams was out the door and they gave up a lot for him. And I'm still really nervous about, I wonder if not giving up anything and just signing Jadeveon Clowney would have been more beneficial to the team. Obviously, I think you guys probably feel a different way. But I think I'd still be hyped because he's a great player. He's going to be really good for your secondary. But I still would be a little nervous about the edge rusher position.
No, I definitely agree with edge rush. I still think that is a very big, important part of this defense that is still needed. But at least with the addition of Jamal Adams and his level of talent, like it at least helps the backfield out, especially since we just lost Quinton Dunbar by the looks of things. Like it's looking like his case is not leaning in the direction that we all hoped, and sadly he might be part of something, not football related and whatnot. But anyway, I just think like it definitely helps the secondary and at least gives them like an edge as compared to like the pass rushing section of the team. But I do agree with you, like maybe trying to find an edge rusher or even more depth at the defensive tackle position could be helpful. But you can't deny though that like this team still needs some stars in order to help Russ get that push. We're basically in win now mode, especially with Russ at the peak of his career and seeing how this trade went down. Seems like we're willing to just give up so much in order to help Russ win, which is fine by me because I do want Russ to have that win, that one more Super Bowl. So for a Seahawks fan, like I understand it might be a lot to trade away, but seeing, how the next few years are going to go, we don't know what's going to happen with COVID, and we're wanting Russ to win now before it's too late or maybe never again. I think it's the right direction to go. Like we needed some more stars to help this team out, and that's why I feel like it was a pretty good deal. Maybe a bit high for price, but I'm completely fine.
Question for you two, Jared and Kyle. Do you not trust – who's your GM?
John Snyder.
John Snyder. I knew it was Snyder, but I wanted to say a different first name for some reason. So Johnny Schneid's over there. Do you not trust him? Is that why you're happy giving away these first two picks? Because has his draft been that great in the first round the last couple of years when you've actually selected?
I've got some numbers to support that, actually.
Ooh,
that's what I was going to say. So John Snyder and Pete Carroll have now been a part of 11 drafts in Seattle. This 2020 draft was their 11th one. One thing that we haven't talked about yet is where Seattle's first round draft position is in those drafts. Only one time were they below pick number 15. And that was actually in the 2010 draft. And you can make the argument that wasn't even a Pete Carroll team who resulted in that. That was the 2009 team that played so poorly under Jim Mora.
Yeah.
So 11 drafts, like I said, for Coach Carroll. Their average draft selection position of those 11 drafts is 23rd. So this is why I'm not super concerned about how much Seattle gave up. I mean, it is still a lot. As you said, it was a king's ransom, but you pay a king's ransom to get a king, right? So, and then you look at the times that Seattle didn't use their first round selection. Kyle probably knows this as well as anybody, but there was a stretch there for 7 years, I think it was, when Pete Carroll traded away the draft pick in the first round, didn't even use it.
Was it Pete or was it Johnny Schneid's?
I mean, it was both. I'm sure.
Right.
They collaborate on those decisions together.
Both in the world.
I would imagine. But, 7 years in a row from 2013 to 2019, they didn't use their first-round selection. Traded away for multiple later-round picks that oftentimes, blossomed into something way better than we would have gotten the first round. That's kind of how Pete and John do it. So 77% of the time in Pete Carroll's draft has the team actually made a first-round selection, whether that be using their original one or trading back. 44% of the time, they use their original first-round selection under Pete Carroll. And then you think of those numbers, and 80% of the time under Pete Carroll, they still make the playoffs. So there's not a real correlation, at least to me, in terms of first-round selections and success as far as the team is concerned. Now, I can't speak to what the Jets would do with those picks. They might be able to get better use out of them than Seattle typically does. But here's the way I look at it. Pete and John are not opposed to trading away first-round picks. That's clear. The only difference is right now is they're not doing it the night of the draft, right? They're doing it a couple years out. That's all it is. Like normally it's a half hour, 15 minutes before Seattle makes a selection, and then bam, the breaking news comes across, Seattle traded it away. It's like to the point where you almost accept it now or expect it. And now it's just them doing it a couple years in advance. So I'm not super worried about giving up those first-round draft picks because, like I said, we don't usually have a high pick anyway, and we seldom use the picks at all. So, I mean, that's just the way I look at it.
I think the biggest concern with it is because you guys have hit really well on late around, like 4th and 5th. Like, wasn't Bobby also pretty late? Bobby Wagner was a late round draft.
Bobby
pick.
was actually a 2nd round, but I mean, Russ in
really?
the 3rd, Sherman Cam in the 5th round,
Yeah,
and Will
fifth,
Disley
Draft
was
off's usually around the
But when you think
Yeah.
about like when you get kind of to that range and you guys have been so successful, you're just taking out potential opportunities to get boom or bust players by getting rid of the first round picks. And then it really comes down to contracts because you're giving all this up and then you're going to pay Jamal Adams, I would think, top dollar money. So he's going to be paid an extreme amount versus getting a bunch of players that could potentially turn into something really well, but paying them literally nothing. I think that's the biggest concern. And really, I think, if the Seahawks go to even the conference championship in the next 2 years, it's probably a worth it trade. Like if Jamal Adams helps you guys to a conference championship because you haven't been there since 2014, right? Since the last time you went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And your playoff success in the last, 4 years has not been great. I think it's 100% worth it. It's just if we look back in a few years and Seattle still gets bounced in the divisional round, I think we might have to reevaluate it. But still, like as a Seahawk fan, anytime you get a superstar, it's like trying to maximize Russ's potential.
Yeah.
Something that I have seen not done with Aaron Rodgers, and them not taking a risk like this and them being close whenever they're. I would be excited for you guys, obviously, because I'm on the outside. I'm a little more nervous about the picks. But overall, I think both teams made pretty decent deals. I just think, 2 first-round picks a lot for a safety.
I haven't said my thoughts on the trade.
Yeah.
I think it's obvious that the Jets won the trade. If there has to be a winner, I think the Jets won it. I think but that doesn't necessarily mean you lost it. I think I wanted Jamal Adams, although I had a sigh of relief because I don't want to give up 2 first-round picks.
Yeah.
I love Jamal Adams. That's 2 first-round picks. Safety depends on your system too and the way your coaches is. Clearly, Pete has had more success with 2 elite safeties than he necessarily has at other positions. I mean, he had 2 probably Hall of Fame safeties play for him, including corner. He clearly gets secondaries. So I get that, where maybe Philly's a different system with how we run things. But I think Joe Douglas has learned a lot from Howie, and I think he didn't pull the trigger on the trade unless he knew he got the better end of the deal, and I think he did. If you guys go and win a Super Bowl, though, then probably you won the trade then.
Yeah,
but
sure.
it does depend on how it goes. But I'd give him up for Jamal. What you're all saying all makes sense to me. I mean, if as a fan, I'd be jumping up and down. I just don't think and it's close, but I don't think I do think the Jets ended up winning the trade.
Concern that I have is, I mean, it really just seems like you guys are putting all your chips into next year or the year after. But another concern I would have is your linebacking core, because Bobby Wagner is obviously a monster, but he's 30 years old, and we just saw Luke Kuechly, who is also a monster, retire. We've seen Patrick Willis retire at a young age. Middle linebacker is typically not the greatest position that ages well because they just are always always getting hit and always dishing out hits. So if something were to happen to Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright could be on the chopping block, I feel like that is a potential opportunity in the next year or two.
Is KJ Wright still balling?
I mean, I think he's a quality player at least. My nervous thing is if you don't make it that far next year and something happens to Bobby, all of a sudden you're kind of in a hole in a similar way that the Bears are with the Khalil Mack trade, that they're not able to get out of the hole that they've caused themselves on offense. But obviously it's very different because you have Russell Wilson.
Yeah. So, and like Jared said, they've been to the playoffs. They've missed once out of the last 8 years, 10 years, something.
I think they missed twice out of the last 10 or 11.
That sounds about right.
Missed what
Yeah.
two years ago?
2011, and they missed in 2017.
Yeah, correct. So, and here's what I think Seattle's process was, or thought process was about the Jamal Adams things. I totally agree with what you said about Bobby Wagner and the linebacking core. That could potentially be an issue a year or two down the road. But I think they're looking at the immediate effect that Jamal Adams can have right now. And last year, Seattle ranked 27th in the league in pass defense in terms of yards allowed. That's the lowest since 2009 for the team. That was before Pete Carroll, like I said. 2 years ago, Jamal Adams and the Jets ranked 9th in the league in pass defense for yards allowed, and that was their best since 2012 when the Jets had Antonio Cromartie. So that goes to show you what a player like him can do on in the back end. And I just think that Seattle was thinking of now. I don't know if they're necessarily saying boom or bust on 2020, but it kind of felt that way with this trade and this pickup. So I don't know. That's the way I look at it. But down the road, we've seen it before with Seattle, where at the time you have all these great guys and it's awesome. But then a couple years down the road, rent is due and you can't pay everybody. And we see like the Legion of Boom split up the way they did. So I don't know what
was a similar fall off because they paid everybody and lost it.
And Jacksonville Jaguars as well.
Yeah.
Also, another thing I agree with you is Jamal Adams is also, because another big concern is edge rusher, because that's just your pass rush is so important. Even though Jadeveon Clowney is an elite edge rusher, Jamal Adams is probably the best safety or defensive back at getting to the quarterback. And so that is just another little plus. Like, obviously, that's not going to be his main role, but he is a great blitzing defensive back.
He's got
so physical. Because he's got 12 more Cam Chancellor than Earl Thomas, right?
I can see that.
Yeah, he's a hard hitter, and to that point of getting to the quarterback, I think his career stats, over 3 years, he has 12 sacks already, so that's pretty impressive for a safety.
That's what we need.
So overall, I would be super excited if I was a Seattle fan.
Looking
just because he's a superstar.
Looking at his contract, I pulled up Jamal's contract because I was curious. So he has 2 years left, including this upcoming season, but it's all on the back end. So he goes from $800,000 this year, and like a $3 million cap hit to a $9 million guaranteed cap hit next year. So you'll definitely probably restructure the deal to keep him for the long term. So it really is a 1 year, like we're going to test it with him cheap, and then he's ours. Yeah. It's a good pickup. I mean, it's never bad adding talent. I do think the Jets won, but it's not an insult.
Yeah. It's also more impressive what the Jets were able to do with being backed in a corner like that. I feel like that's what makes that trade so surprising from them. But obviously they could whiff on 2 draft picks, and it's like, we probably should have kept Jamal Adams. Not Williams. He's a Packer.
So that's why I think it might be a little bit early to say who won and lost yet. We've got to see the on-the-field result. But also, I think, like you said, what the Jets were able to get out of Seattle, I think that's also a testament to how badly Seattle knew they needed help on the back end.
Yeah.
I think, obviously, it was no secret to anyone in the league that we were horrible in the secondary last year, and I think the Jets knew that. And I think when they began talks with Seattle about this, whenever that was, they were really able to twist Pete Carroll's arm a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but hey, it got us Jamal Adams, so
it did.
So I'm fine with that. All right, so I guess I can take us into our next topic. We've been hearing a lot about Dalvin Cook, the running back of the Vikings, and his contract situation. At first, he was going to hold out because he wanted to get paid, wanted to get his money, but now he's returning to camp by the sounds of it. So we just kind of want to see about his contract situation. Like, should they extend him? Should they not? What do we think about him?
They should
deciding to not hold out. Well, all right, we can start that with you.
They should extend him, but they should not extend him for the price he wants because he's had one elite year and a lot of banged up years. And that's why he wants it, because he knows he gets banged up and he wants his guarantees, he wants his money, and the boy deserves to be paid. But from an organizational standpoint, I get why they're hesitant to give him the money he's demanding. But Does he have the talent for the money? Absolutely. The boy deserves his money. But as an organization, that's why they don't want to give it to him, and they'll probably settle on something in the middle, or he'll do the Le'Veon Bell thing. He'll hold out, and then he'll go take less money at a different team that's not relevant.
All right.
Sorry, Joe Douglas. You may have won the trade, but you're still irrelevant.
Well, Nick, this especially,
Yeah.
you especially know about this guy because you play him so often and
Yeah.
know about his work. So
Yeah, I'm a huge Dalvin fan. I think I'm always a little nervous to pay running backs, especially in the market that's coming up this year. That's a similar thing the Packers have with Aaron Jones. But I think realistically they are right on the cap, and I think they made a lot of really clever moves for the next few years of their franchise this offseason. They had a really good draft. And even though trading Stephon Diggs is going to hurt them immediately, it's going to be better in the long run because it's just a better money move. But I actually would say give him around a Derrick Henry contract where it's all up front for the next 2 years, similar maybe price range if you can get a deal like that, because I think he's in a similar talent range as him. And let's be honest, if they have no chance to compete to even get to a championship game if Dalvin isn't healthy and playing awesome. So there's no reason to not pay him, because it seems like they're going to try and push for a Super Bowl for the next 2 years because they've got a lot of defensive players who seem like they're getting older. This defense was awesome in 2017, and it's basically the same defense just slowly getting chipped away. I know Delaney Hunter is 26, so in a couple of years he's getting up there. Harrison Smith and Anthony Harris, Eric Kendricks, they're all awesome, and they need to utilize that defense before they have to rebuild it.
lost all their corners though.
They lost 3 cornerbacks, but they also got they drafted a cornerback who in the first round who could be pretty good. I can't remember his name. It was late in the first.
I'll look him up.
And then they've got, obviously, Justin Jefferson, who isn't going to replace Stephon Diggs this year, but in 2 years he could have similar production. So I think you should try to pay him soon, but obviously there's a risk with running backs because running backs are it's a very, very tough position, and you never know if what happened with Todd Gurley is going to happen to you. But I think Dalvin's worth the risk. He's that talented, and they have no chance to compete if he's not healthy. They are not a real playoff team, I don't think, if they don't have Dalvin, especially next year, because they lost Stephon Diggs, and I don't think Adam Thielen is as good as everyone else does. I think the players support me on that, considering he wasn't on the top 100.
He should have been. Well, actually, he was injured though.
We'll get to the top one.
We will get to the
little foreshadowing there. So I think Dalvin Cook is necessary for them if they want to compete over the next 2-3 years, especially with Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins may have beat Drew Brees in one playoff game. We still know who he is. He's still not in the upper echelon. They need Dalvin. So I would say pay him, but just don't give him 4 years of guaranteed money. Put the guarantees in the front half, and then you can restructure it later on.
Were you talking about the cornerback Jeff Gladney?
Yeah, I think so.
Gladney?
Yep.
All right. Jared, you got any thoughts about it?
Yeah, Nick, I pretty much 100% agree with you there. He is necessary, but at the same time, I get why Minnesota has been hesitant on it. Because you remember it was a couple years ago, I believe, when he had that stage 3 ACL tear.
Mm-hmm.
And an injury like that is not – I mean, you guys as sports fans know, anyone that tears an ACL, they're never quite the same again. And I think it's because he's in a position that is so brutal. And like you said, Kirk Cousins is Kirk Cousins. Take that however you may. They're going to be using their running back a lot this year, I think, to take a lot of pressure off him because, as you mentioned, they did lose Stephon Diggs. And, he's going to be the guy if he's there, and more carries obviously equals more chance of getting injured. And in his last year of his contract, I understand why they're hesitant to do it, but I think looking down the road, they have to. I mean, they have to extend him. So that's kind of where I land on that whole thing.
Yeah. I think the one avenue that they do have, if they don't extend him, because they're going to have to get another edge rusher alongside Hunter, and they might, if they are confident enough in Kirk Cousins, which is probably not a good choice, but if they are, they might say in this market coming up, let's sign a decent running back, a very quality running back, to a much more manageable deal, then maybe we can help the defense as well. But I think in the long run, Dalvin Cook is that type of player that can make Kirk Cousins look like a top 10 quarterback, and it'll take a lot of pressure off Adam Thielen and a lot of pressure off of Justin Jefferson and Kyle Rudolph, because obviously they're in a tough division with the Bears defense and the Packers. So I'd still say pay him, but it's always a risk with running backs, though, more than probably any other position.
I think I'm leaning towards signing him, which is kind of funny. At first, I just saw way too many injuries in his first 2 years for me to easily say, no, don't bother signing this guy. But this last year, he definitely proved me wrong with his talent level, that's for sure. I do think because of how much he proved that his talent is worth a certain price. I'm thinking what you're saying, Nick, would be a pretty suitable contract, at least for the organization. I don't know if Dalvin is willing to do that for the organization, for the team, or if he just wants the money his own way. I just don't know the guy to figure that out, but I think that could be a good solution for the both of them. At least it would make sense, and Dalvin will still be the workhorse that he has been. Obviously, they do have Alexander Madison in the back next to him as well, so at least there's still that 1-2 punch that you can keep going for a few years, because I believe that other guy's a rookie. So even if you did sign him and you see how it played out, you still got him in the backfield as the insurance.
Yeah.
So I think it wouldn't hurt them too badly, especially since they shipped away Diggs and actually they lost a whole bunch of people, like I said, the corners on the defense, where their cap space is probably better, to where in those 2 years that we're thinking that we can still see him at his best, where it could be able to be worthwhile.
Yeah, I think just really Derrick Henry's contract is kind of the contract to look at for running backs for the next 2 years, because organizations have seen what's happened with Todd Gurley, and I think Christian McCaffrey is a little bit of an outlier just because he got so many carries at Stanford, and he still just came to the NFL, does the same thing, he's never hurt. He's kind of the outlier, I think. So I think looking at running backs in that kind of a tier, obviously it's going to be insane at the end of this year with all of these really good running backs being up for new contracts. But I think Derrick Henry's contract and how it's structured, 4 years, but all the guarantees in the first 2 is going to be kind of the norm moving forward, would be my guess. And that's why where they'll end up is somewhere in that ballpark if they do make a deal.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Then I guess we'll move on then. Recently, the Washington team who shall not be named has put up a temporary team name, which is the Washington football team. All right. It's something at least for this year until they come up with a long-term solution, which I think is better. No need to rush it, but you got to at least do something with the team name. It can't just be the Washington team who shall not be named. It should be at least something to go along for the time being. So it's kind of funny just because it's so generic and bland or whatever, but it's temporary. So, it is what it is. It'll be fine.
I think it's smart. Actually, from the organization.
Which you flipped your tune on that. Because at first you did not like it, right?
Yes. No, I didn't. I flipped my tune. The organization just made it where this is now a collectible if it doesn't work. And if people dig it and they do well financially next year, people are like, name's actually Washington football team's fine. Then they can just keep it. There was lots of good names being floated around, which I still wouldn't mind seeing, but I think it's smart because now there's merch that if this only sticks for a year and next year they become the Washington Red Tails or Red Wolves or something like that, then next year, or there's 1 year where it's they had that transition, so now you've got a collectible, which I think is smart. It is lazy, but it works, and it is smart, and it's them just saying, let's not deal with this, and it might be because I don't know. Maybe they've got some. What's Dan Snyder up there? The owner. The owner. He might have something else. Maybe he's got something that he thinks is still of Native American, but he thinks it's of honor. Maybe that's what he's doing, and he's waiting for kind of the protest movement to hopefully die. I don't know. I mean, he's clearly not the biggest, kind guy to
he's a
different communities of minorities.
Yeah,
but he a loon and a half plus 12 million. But yeah, I think it ended up being a smart move, and it's good that the coach they hired is a minority who is in the room, who's helping make these decisions. Because Ron Rivera is a masterclass. He's a great coach.
Exactly. Love Ron Rivera.
His quote where he says, look, it's simple. I got fired because Cam Newton wasn't healthy. Cam Newton's healthy, we win games. Cam Newton's not healthy, we don't win games. Yeah. Like he's an honest guy. He's a good guy. I like Ron. But that's my little take on that.
Jared, you got your thoughts?
Yeah, so we actually touched on this in my own podcast this last week. We talked about this name change.
Real quick, what's the name of your podcast there, bud?
Me and Justin Wright started a podcast. It's called The Expansion Buddies. So you can check us out on iTunes, Spotify, all those good places. So
as many as you need. Link in the description. Listen to it today. It was great.
Thank you. We did touch on that in our first episode there, though. And I hadn't thought of the collectible angle that you took, Alex, but I don't think that they did this because they were thinking of a collectible. I think that was a nice little side effect to their incompetence, quite frankly. I think that this whole situation has really showcased how poorly run that organization is. I don't know why you would announce at the beginning of July, we're going to retire this name and not have something lined up already. I just can't fathom that, especially as a professional sports team. You'd think that they would have 3 or 4, 5 names, cocked and loaded in the chamber, and to not have any. And I think you can attest some of it to the fact that Dan Snyder, as we've talked about, has historically dug his heels in when it comes to this issue. I mean, he went kicking and screaming with this basically because he was forced to financially. They're not doing it for the right reasons. They're doing it because they had pressure put on them by their sponsors. So I think that this is just another example of how they dropped the ball. And I know that there was that report of that businessman that bought up some of those potential names.
Like 45 names.
Yeah, to try to force the team to pay him some big bucks for him. And I did read a few things that there were some hiccups the team was running into and trying to pick a new name. But you would think that they would have that figured out before they announced the retirement. And granted, a lot of this social justice movement did kind of get thrust upon us in a big way. It was probably something that back in April that the team was not even remotely considering until all of the riots broke out. And I think it was kind of thrust upon everybody, but it just feels to me like they didn't do their homework on this one. And they just dropped the ball big time.
Might be right.
Yeah, I think, I can understand the idea of not wanting to screw it up. Like, if it is just from a place of, we got this, we want to get this name right, and we want this name to be perfect, waiting a year, I can understand it. Because obviously it seems like they've had a lot of issues and they weren't anticipating to have to change the name. But on the other hand, when they do come out with a name in a year from now, the expectations are going to be sky high. Like, if their name sucks, they are going to get roasted because people would have understood if they just wanted to get a name as quickly as possible to remove themselves from the horrendous name that they used to have. And so everyone have been like, okay, this name isn't great, but it's so much better than what it was. And at least you did it quickly. Now that there's expectations, it's like, okay, if they come up with an awesome name, I think, in 10 years, we're not going to think about this because it's going to be a sweet name. But if it sucks, people are going to be like, remember that time Washington took a year to come up with a name and that's what they came up with? So I can understand where they come from. I don't think they want to screw it up. And also there is just like, what if Snyder has to sell the team or something and the new owner gets to pick?
Probably should.
if he did sell the team, at the end of the year, which he probably won't, like a new owner could pick the name, right? Like maybe people are thinking in the organization being like, well, we think we can get Snyder out, or we think pressures from other places can get him out. Then we can just do it with a whole new organization, restart it from the ground up. I don't know if that's in the cards, but I think it's just it's better than what they had, but it's going to be interesting to see what they pick.
If they do pick a new name under Dan Snyder, though, they've lost no matter what. Even if Snyder actually doesn't pick the name, no matter who picks the name, if it represents any sort of group, they're going to get backlash for not representing another group, or for trying to make amends, which I've seen a lot. Like I saw that with the Red Tails. So they just want to make amends. It's like that's the whole point. That's the point. They're trying to be better. But it's going to be a losing situation regardless. If they pick like the Washington Tigers, and that's a kind of a lame name, everybody's going to be like, do exactly what you're saying. They're going to be like, oh, they took a year to come up with that and it didn't do anything good. So Jared could be right. They could be just taking the kind of lazy route and waiting. They could not be. It could be planned. I don't know. Who knows what's going on? But I trust Ron Rivera.
Yeah, I'm just glad that the name is different. That's, I think, the biggest thing. But there's still a long way to go, I think, with that organization and getting actual change.
I just think even under their ownership, they'll always have a long way to go. Like, I do trust Ron Rivera. I think he will lead that team a lot better than, like, past coaches have for them. But I don't know. When you have bad ownership, even if you're a good coach, it's just so hard to change around a franchise,
Yeah. And you saw it in the littlest things they did through this whole process. I don't know if any of you guys saw the official press release they sent out when they first announced it.
Yeah.
If you noticed, in the first paragraph and in the last paragraph, they did it twice. They said, we want to create an all-inclusive and positive experience for our sponsors, fans, and community. Yep. Listen to the order they did that. Yep. Sponsors first, fans and community came second. And that's the way Dan Snyder thinks. That's the way the organization thinks. And the reason I was so negative on my take about all of this is because of his track record. His track record there is just, it's one thing after another. And it's just – and then the on-the-field product isn't even good. It's not even something that fans can be excited about. So I feel for Washington fans right now. This has got to be just brutal to watch their team do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, you can only hope that even though they're kind of going through some rough goes right now between like the change and already such bad management and whatnot, you just only hope that like Ron Rivera can turn it around. Maybe he can make Dwayne Haskins something great. Maybe Terry McLaurin will go off even more so. Maybe the defense with Chase Young is going to go up another level. And that will be great. But
I do like Chase Young.
Yeah, I mean,
Chase Young's a beast.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be good. Like, maybe we'll see good football out of them with all the pieces they added, but they're still bad.
Yeah. And like you said, this could be the first step toward the light at the end of the tunnel, however far away that light may seem. Yeah. But I've said it before, I think that this is really going to be Ron Rivera's defining moment in his coaching career. It's real easy. Well, I won't say easy, but it's a lot easier when you have Cam Newton playing at the level he was playing back in 2015 to get a team to a Super Bowl. What is he going to do with this dumpster fire that he has just walked into? I mean, I think a couple years down the road, this is going to be a turning point in his career for better or worse. We just kind of have to wait and see.
Let's all be honest. No matter what happens, Philly up by 20.
I mean, I think Ron can do good things with Dwayne Haskins.
Dwayne Haskins.
Philly up by 25.
Dwayne Haskins, I don't know if you guys have seen his Instagram or not, but he looks good. Like he looks like he trimmed up his body a lot.
Excuse me, have you seen the video of Carson Wentz walking into the facility? Guy's looking swole, baby.
I've seen Carson Wentz.
Come on, Carson.
But I'm also saying Dwayne
I'll tell you where I didn't see Carson Wentz, though, is that top 100 list. So,
well, we'll get there, and it'll be fiery. What we call a tease.
So before we get to the top 100 thoughts, we did want to talk about what the NFL is doing when it comes to COVID. There's a lot of question marks that seem to be up in the air. There's been a lot of testing that hasn't been really good for some franchises. Like we've seen some stars like Kenny Galladay and TJ Hawkinson from the Lions kind of like having to be under quarantine after testing positive. I'm sure the same is with a bunch of your guys' teams. I haven't been able to go through all the lists or whatnot, but it just seems like it's kind of murky waters. We're hoping that there's still a season and this all works out, but it seems like even still some players are confused and they're opting out because they just don't feel safe, whether it's personal reasons or just because they don't feel safe in general and feel like the NFL is doing a good job. So I just wanted to hear thoughts about all of it, like all the guys opting out, all of, the guys that are getting tested positive for COVID already. Like what's going through your guys' mind right now?
I pulled up the list of those who have opted out.
Yeah.
I'll go through just a few of kind of the big headliners. Some guys are just kind of rotational pieces. Obviously, New England had the biggest hit with player count, but like guys like Devin Funches, Dante Hightower, Marquise Goodwin, Chance Warmack for you guys, who's a pretty solid lineman.
Yeah.
Are kind of some of the more notable names. Damien Williams, which is big for Kansas City. That's their number one running back.
Yeah, he was hurt a lot last year. Wasn't he?
Yeah.
Clyde's going to go off.
And Nate Solder has left after leaving New England, signing a big deal, and then he's opting out, as well as Patrick Chung, who I think is wildly overrated, and I'm happy to brag about it.
Patrick Chung's good.
Yeah, but he came to Philly and then left because he was awful. And I was excited because he was supposed to be real good, and then he went to New England and was good.
Well, that's your coaching
It was
staff.
Chip Kelly, but I'm still angry and bitter about it. You might want to have the volume a little lower once we get going here. For the fans.
People.
But for these guys, like, players need to do what they think's right for them and their family. If they opt out, they opt out. For myself, Marquise Goodwin's a blow because this guy's got speed, something we need in Philly, and I was excited to see him, although many of the beat writers had us cutting him. Honestly, like 90% of what I was seeing was he's probably going to get cut after restructuring his deal.
Trust the beat writers.
Oh, those are my boys. But they, they got to do what's right for them, and I think, I lost my train of thought because I was thinking about how sad I am that he's not playing. But yeah, you got to do what's right for your family. Somebody else take this from me.
Well, I think oh no, I cut Jared off. But I think it makes, like, I want them, even if they're doing protocols that seem silly, seem overkill, I think it's a good idea because I feel like I hear people on opposite ends of the spectrum of people being like really freaking out over everything they're doing. We're seeing that with the NBA recently with, players sitting in the stand 6 feet away from each other, but then they go out and they're bumping up against each other. And it's like, whatever precautions they have to take to stay safe, it's worth it. Like, I don't care if they have to stand 6 feet apart at times, if they have to wear a mask in the building. And for players opting out, I think it's just like, I don't want, a lot of them have young kids, and, if either they wouldn't be allowed to see their child that was just born for the entirety of the season, or they would be putting that child at risk. And I can obviously understand why they would want to do that. So I'm not going to ever criticize anyone for dropping out. It makes me sad that Devin Funches isn't playing just because
he was your savior.
He's my savior. He's the only good receiver. We finally got him. But I want to see him play, but obviously I 100% support him not playing. I hope we can have a season with everything, and so I hope they keep upping how much the protocols with all the new knowledge coming out. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I just want people to be safe over playing.
NFL's in a lucky position too that this hit when they're off, and they're the last to start, so they get to watch everybody. I mean, the NBA, we talked about this on another episode. I don't know if I've said it to Jared or if Jared's heard me say this, but like everybody talks about, the NBA can't do a bubble. Just get a bigger bubble. Or the NFL. Just get a bigger bubble. If you got more people, you need a bigger bubble. That's how it works. So just get a bigger bubble.
Stop saying it.
I just wanted to keep saying it. But Wentz talked about that. He did a press conference yesterday and said because he has a new infant child who's only half a year old or something like that, and he talked about how they had a long conversation about it, and just every player's in different positions with what they want to do. I think the NFL does care. Sometimes it doesn't feel like they do, but I think they do, and they're going to take every precaution, and they're in the position to see what's going on with the NBA with this Marlins craziness, or the MLB, with the Marlins, and they're going to say, all right, we really got to put hard restrictions on what the players are going to do, because if we're not going to put them in a bigger bubble, we need to – they can't go anywhere. They got to go home and at the facility. But, yeah.
We should get an NFL island.
A big bubble, man. That's all I'm saying.
That's a big bubble.
Well, And at least early on here, it does seem like the bubble is the right way to go. You look at the situation in the NBA and you compare it to what's happening in baseball right now. I think the last 2 test results the NBA's come out with, no positive tests. And then you look at what's happening with baseball and the Marlins, like you mentioned. I think just today, the St. Louis Cardinals had some test positive. A couple more games got postponed. And MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred said, if we can't get this thing under control, we could cancel the season by Monday. So, and I think that's just what comes with it when you don't do the bubble and you do have these teams still traveling to their local markets and all over the country. And the other thing is with the Marlins, too, a report came out that this happened because a bunch of them went clubbing one night. It's these guys at some point have to just be put on the honor system to be like, just do what you're supposed to do. Why take any chances? So I agree with Nick. I don't think there's such thing as overkill when it comes to this. I would never fault any player, coach, whoever for opting out of their sport this season. Safety is it's much more important. So, yeah, you're right, though. The NFL has had the opportunity to kind of watch and study and take notes. And I have to say, though, if I'm them and they're planning to go the route that baseball's going, where they're not doing the bubble, I'd be a little worried with what's happened over the last 3 or 4 days.
And, Jared, do you know baseball's doing 60 games and then the playoffs? Is that correct?
60 games and then an expanded playoffs for this season only, yes.
How many months would you guess that is?
Well, they're still planning to do the playoffs and World Series in October like normal, and they started, a week ago? So
I mean, they play basically every day.
Yeah, I know. I'm just curious because the NBA is going to go about 2 months. If MLB is going about 2, the NFL's going their normal route. So they've got a bigger also beast to hit because there's guys who are going to be away a lot longer. But at the same time, the NFL is such a league by system. They believe, like the NBA is player-driven. The NFL is big on we're not player-driven. We're system-driven. We can fit, some people be better at it, but we can get a new great wide receiver in 2 years. Like, it's not that difficult. So if you don't play, your money's on the line, your job's on the line, your livelihood's on the line. And so it's interesting to see more players. Are they going to leave? And if any real high-profile players leave.
Like, interesting one. I don't know if he said anything about it, but Russell Wilson just had a child.
Win Wilson, baby.
Win Wilson.
Yeah, win.
Future of the Seahawks franchise. Just wait.
But like,
you guys are so attached.
That's a player who could. I mean, I don't think there's been any indication that Russell Wilson isn't going to play. But if something were to happen and circumstances were to change, anyone who has like a young kid who doesn't want to put them at risk, Russell Wilson could be a player maybe on the board or a big player. That's really going to see what the NFL reacts, because the NFL doesn't care that Devin Funches and Damien Williams aren't
Patty
Mahomes, Russell Wilson, those guys, if they're not playing, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting to keep a watch on. Like, when does even someone like a Julio Jones, just like a big wide receiver, something like that.
And what does the NFL do if they do have a situation like what's happening with the Marlins breakout? You're seeing the Marlins cancel games here and there, but they play 60 games. Is an NFL team going to have to cancel one of their 16 games, maybe more, if this happens? And then you're talking about all those implications as far as playoffs and records. They could have a huge mess on their hands here. Yeah. So they're just going to have to really do better than the baseball. I mean, it's that simple.
And I'm not super into baseball. I haven't seen necessarily what their protocols are. I've only seen in sports the NBA bubble and then what the Eagles are doing. And in Philly, they're taking it super serious. And there's this, players have to arrive at specific times. You got to go through a ton of stuff officially to get in there and be super safe. So it just depends on how each organization does it too. And it'll be interesting. Watching the NBA with no fans has been fine. Watching the NFL with no fans, I think, is going to be really interesting. I think
they have a really good opportunity, though, to make the hits be like the main show, because like we hear hits, we can hear hits now.
Yeah. So, all right, for our final discussion, we have to talk about the NFL Top 100, what we liked, and we're probably going to talk a lot about what we disliked. Like, there was a lot of hot takes flying around with like the rankings and whatnot, and we surely do have a lot to discuss and go over. So, Al,
I'm going first?
It seems like you're
Or do you-
ready to go, but
If you want to go first, or should we just do what we liked first?
we can do that. Let's talk about what we
All right.
liked.
This was the worst list they've done ever. I didn't really like
like
anything.
anything.
Lamar's ranking, pretty solid. Some of the rankings, pretty good. Some of the happy for the players. Love when they recognize each other. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
I'm personally just happy that Russ is number 2. Like, when I realized he was in top 5 or top 10, I was hoping at least top 5. And then to my surprise, he's the number 2 guy. So, hey, I'll take it. Like, that's a win for me. Like, I'm happy players are recognizing him for how talented he is. So that's the biggest thing I love the most.
Yeah, I, as a Packer fan, because obviously I think that's where we're all going as our teams, I think Preston Smith, Zadarius Smith, Aaron Jones, then I was so shocked that Preston Smith was 63. I think that's even borderline too high for him, but really cool to see him on the list, to see them getting represented. Aaron Jones being 33, super here for that. I'm glad Lamar was over Russ because I think he deserved it. There's someone else who I think should have been over them both, but we'll get to that in a minute. Yeah, I liked Derrick Henry being high and Christian McCaffrey being in the top 10 as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess those were the main positive things I look at is for the Packers. So just seeing like Bakhtiari as well being on the list, he probably could have been a little higher, but I'm not going to pout too much about it.
Jared, what do you think?
Yeah. So, well, what I loved is the Bobby Wagner love, number 13.
Yeah.
So that was well deserved. He has been to those who don't follow the Seahawks, even if you don't, you should still know this. But he has been just the rock, really.
Yeah.
He on defense and Russ on offense. I was happy to see Russ at number 2. I agree with Nick. There's a certain someone I think that should be ranked above him. I'm sure we can get to that. But, yeah, I liked Russ in the top 5, top 3, really.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I mean, those were my biggest 2 as far as the Seahawks are concerned.
So let's just get this part over with. Like, everyone was talking about it towards the tail end. Lamar Jackson was ranked number 1 by the players in the NFL, and we were all thinking him maybe like 3 or 4, while Patty probably should be or easily should be number 1, just seeing at what this guy can do. I love Russ, but even I know Patrick Mahomes is something else. So that was probably the biggest shocker and a good way to cap off that list for sure. But I guess when you're the MVP and you're lighting up players with like your spin moves and your speed, like that's just a good way of doing it.
He should be. He was voted the MVP. He's the most valuable player in the league this year. He should be at least top 2. I thought it was going to go Lamar, Patty. I love that Russ is up there, but he's not over Lamar and Patty. I get he carried his team. He did. There's another guy who carried his team that got no recognition, but whatever.
Well, also there's I actually don't mind Lamar at 1. I think Lamar should have been 1 and 2.
I'm fine with
3
Lamar
at
1.
worst. Aaron Donald, I think, is really hard to place because I think there's no player that's clearly as good, but well, maybe Patty, but like Aaron Donald might be the best we've ever seen at his position. Like, he's so dominant, but he's not a quarterback, so he is hard to place. But I think Lamar, just because he's done things we have never seen people do before on a football field, I understand why he's that high, and he doesn't have that much. Like, Mark Ingram was on the list, but that was it for his offensive playmakers. And we talk a big game as Packer fans about how Aaron doesn't have playmakers, but he had 2 players in the top 100. Russ had 3 players. Obviously, Patty had 2, I think, only, but everyone knows he has a lot of talent. So the thing that makes me more upset is Patty being behind Russell Wilson, because Russell Wilson barely beat Josh McCown in the playoffs.
On
and Patty Mahomes
on a torn hamstring.
Don't bring it up.
Patty Mahomes came back. I mean, I know he was hurt, and his stats don't jump off the page with 26 touchdowns and 13 or 14 games I think he played. But he came back from 3 comebacks easily, except in the Super Bowl, which he did in the 4th quarter, to beat Jimmy Garoppolo, who was pretty high on this list, Ryan Tannehill, who was probably a little too high on this list for how good he is, and Deshaun Watson, who could have been is probably, I think, decently placed. So, like, I think Patty I think Patty, like, I understand, even though I think Patty's a better quarterback than Lamar, I can understand why Lamar would be higher just because he's so unique, and I don't think he has the offensive talent that some of these other quarterbacks have. So I can understand if they were 1 and 2. Russ, I would put a little bit further back at the third quarterback. Yeah. That was the one thing that really frustrated me. But clearly people gave the Seahawks a lot of love in this.
I was actually very surprised, and I'll take it. Like, I mean, some Seahawks fans were complaining, like, our players are ranked too high. Personally, I was like, hey, they're on the list to begin with, so I'll take it. Like, I'll take what I can get. I feel like people sleep on some of our players quite a bit. With Lamar's playmakers, I just realized, yes, they do have Mark Ingram listed, but they actually don't have Mark Andrews, I don't think. I don't see him on this list at all, and he's probably the number one weapon that they got. I mean, outside of Hollywood Brown, but Hollywood he was injured, hot and cold, at least from what I saw. But so I was surprised by that one for sure. That was with how good Lamar was, I'm surprised that they didn't at least give some nod to Mark Andrews. Hope maybe next year, because I do think Mark Andrews is a talented tight end, but that one was a bit surprising now that you mentioned his playmakers for sure.
Yeah, so I actually have a question for you guys. I'll be honest. I'm not a huge follower of the top 100. I mean, I pay attention to it, but I don't, sit there and dissect it. Is it just what they do in the regular season, or is it the whole season through the Super Bowl?
Here's what they do.
It is.
They give some players, not everybody votes for it. It's a big range of some players. Some do the show where they're actually talking about them, and they do like a rating of their top 10 players in football. And then all of those top 10 get rearranged and ordered and by votes, I believe. They don't do a whole top 100.
Oh, I did not know that.
No, they do like a top 10.
Who put DK Metcalf in the top 10?
Pat McAfee talked about it a lot on his show because he had voted for the Madden rating, or for the top 100 before, and talked about this. He's like, I got a top 10. You get a top 10. And these guys, some of them probably knows the stats, and I know Dak Prescott almost threw 5,000 yards. But most of them are going off of their boys. Like, that's my guy. Like, that's him. There is no reason that Carson Wentz shouldn't be on this list. It makes no sense. It doesn't. Not at all. Especially when Dak Prescott gets on there at 46. He didn't make the playoffs. He had his yards were higher. Touchdowns were higher by 3. He threw more picks than Wentz. Yards are higher off of 11 less attempts. Carson Wentz dealt with the lowest yards after catch of everybody in the league. He was clutch, and he took them to the playoffs. All of the quarterbacks on the top 100 made the playoffs except 2, Kyler Murray and Dak Prescott. I'm fine with both of them being on the list, but the fact that Wentz isn't, he's the only one who made the playoffs who's not on the list. It's just because the players view him and say, this guy gets hurt. That's it. His MVP year, guess he was third. I was going to ask guess. He was third the year he almost won MVP or should have won MVP. But the players have their own way of doing it. I've got all the stats here of all the quarterbacks. Wentz is as good, better than almost all of them in every category. And he took a bunch of nobodies. How about you talk about Greg Ward and Burnett? You know who that is?
Yeah, Madden.
He had just Zachertz and Dallas Goedert and Miles Sanders were his playmakers, and he took them to the playoffs. I get it. He got a concussion on a cheap shot. That's a cheap shot. That's not tearing your ACL on a dive to the end zone. It was not an accident. It was a cheap shot.
Here's the question I have.
People need to knock it off.
I think we all probably agree that Wentz is.
But this is my platform, and I want to yell about it.
I have a question for Kyle, because one of the my biggest thing that I'm upset about is Devante Adams being 57. When he was in the 30s last year, and granted he missed 4 games, but he dominated the Seahawks in the playoffs, and his stats on a per-catch basis were still the same. And so it's like he shouldn't have dropped 20 spots probably for missing 4 games to turf toe. That just makes me mad because I think Devante is an elite receiver and some people don't view him. But the question I have for Kyle, because I know Kyle's a huge Adam Thielen fan.
I am.
And obviously some of the players don't. Diggs was on the list in the 60s. He was in the 50s. He was higher than Devante. So he's 54, I think. And and Adam Thielen didn't make the list, but a player that did make the list was DK Metcalf. Like, would you put DK Metcalf from last season? I know we had a great playoff game, but like he didn't have 1,000 yards.
He was close.
He had 53 catches though. Like,
He had
would
900 yards.
would you really put him over Adam Thielen or even Allen Robinson? Because I know I wouldn't yet. But I'm curious what your thought process is on that.
No, I mean, I love DK. Don't get me wrong. And the year that he had was more than I ever thought he was going to be able to do. So props to that guy for sure. But right now, no. Like, I don't think that he's better than Allen Robinson or Adam Thielen. I know Adam Thielen got injured, and like Alex was saying, like players kind of probably
He's
view
a
him
dog,
that
though.
way.
DK's a dog, and some players are like, this guy's awesome. He's a stud. Put him on the top.
And
They
he
put
had
him in
a
their top 10.
huge game against the Eagles,
Yeah, he
obviously.
shredded
but
us.
I don't know if I'd put that over Allen Robinson, who was having Mitch Trubisky throw to him.
No, I mean, again, like, I mean, when it comes to this list, like, some people dissect it and some people just say whatever, like, you know, but it just makes for a fun conversation anyway. Yeah. But when it comes to DK, I don't think right now I would say that he's better than Allen Robinson or Adam Thielen. And I have a man crush on Adam Thielen. I love that guy. I kind of understand why he's not on the list this year. It's probably just due to the injury, but I think he'll bounce back anyway. But I'm just, again, like, I'm happy those Seahawks players got on the list to begin with. Like, I wasn't expecting
It's nice
DK.
when any player gets on the
for
list.
sure. So I'll take what I can get. I'm good. I'm good with that.
What about you, Jared? What did you think of that?
Yeah, as far as DK goes, it's, well, based on how you explain the players do it, this list obviously is inherently flawed. I mean, you're not going to get an actual – I think it's impossible to actually rank 100 players from different positions.
Yeah,
but
Sure.
yeah, as far as DK goes, though, I think part of it is he just did make – I think he just had such a splash his rookie season where it's what you said, Alex. Guys just looked at him and thought, man, this guy's a beast. And they probably didn't think about guys like Thielen when they were doing this. I mean, unless you maybe played against Thielen a lot or were on Minnesota, I don't know. When I hear the two names and just think of last year, I think DK first. I mean, I'll be honest, but I'm also biased the other way. So I don't know. But, yeah, it was nice to see him on the list, and I think people are excited about the potential too.
Yeah, there's three other receivers that come to mind when it comes to them not being on the list for me. There's A.J. Brown, Terry McLaurin, and Kenny Golladay.
Oh, my bad.
I think those three guys this year, like, I mean, A.J. Brown and Terry McLaurin, they blew up. They were insane.
If you take out the playoff game from DK, McLaurin just had a way better season, didn't he? He had over 1,000 yards.
No, he was there.
And he had
for sure.
Haskins and Case Keenum throwing to him with no running game and no other receivers. DK Metcalf has Tyler Lockett at least on the other side of him.
Sure.
But I do think that playoff game probably put him on the list.
Yeah.
And sticking on the topic of receivers, what I thought was interesting is that Hopkins was above Julio. And I know the Falcons weren't that good last year, but like I feel like Julio's the most talented receiver playing right now. And even though I know Michael Thomas clearly had a better year than him last year, I still, in a vacuum, would probably take Julio Jones over Michael Thomas. And these three guys are all really close. They are the best you can get. Then I think you kind of get Devante Adams, Tyreek, and Mike Evans behind them. But were you guys a little surprised that Julio was 11 and Hopkins made it in the top 10?
I was fine with it. I really love Hopkins.
Should have been top. Hopkins has been doing it with no one for
True,
5 years. 10 years. He's Larry Fitzgerald. He's had average to maybe slightly above average QBs his whole career, and then he got Deshaun Watson for 2 years, 3 years. He had 1 year he's real hurt. That's DeAndre's a beast. I love Michael Thomas. DeAndre and Julio should have been above him, though.
Yeah, I could agree.
Should have been above him. That's what I think. It is hard because I think Hopkins had a little bit of a down year statistically. I could be wrong on that, but Julio is just a freak. He's just everything. If you thought up the greatest receiver physically, it would be Julio Jones. If him or Calvin Johnson, right? Like,
yeah,
unless we're going back to like Randy, but
I don't know.
That was interesting to me.
Hopkins is just a freak of nature to me, period. Like, just the way
His hands are good.
his hands are good. Like, he runs the routes so good. Like, I don't know. I just am always amazed by his play. And I was able to watch a lot more Texans games, luckily, thanks to loving Deshaun Watson so much. And just seeing Hopkins play, I was like, oh, yeah, this guy is just way too talented for sure.
Can I throw a fun stat out?
Sure. And then I'm gearing up for a rant.
So
I've been gearing it up.
This is a stat that should send everyone watching in U3 here. It should send tremors down your spine. Because get ready for it.
Yes,
in the
we
last
were a top 2 injured team in football last 2 years. Philly, get healthy.
In the last 10 years, 2 years, Aaron Rodgers has been left out of the top 10. It was in 2011 and 2014. He was ranked 11th. So a little bit, obviously he was 16.
Was he hurt one of those years?
No, 2010 he came off of winning the Super Bowl that year. In the offseason, he was ranked 11th, even though he had one of the greatest quarterbacking runs we've seen efficiency-wise. And in 2013, he was a little hurt. That was the first collarbone injury. Both years he won MVP. Get ready, boys. He's out of the top 10, guaranteed MVP. Let's get it.
I think you just predicted the future.
Yeah, it happened. In 2014, he went MVP. You know, we don't like how that season ended. I wish he could get away with throwing 4 picks in a championship game and winning. But yeah,
recover an onside kick. That's all I have to say.
or just create the greatest defense ever.
One of those two. All right, Alex. The floor is yours.
Fletcher Cox and Zachertz both dropped 45 spots from last year to this year. Fletcher Cox's sacks were down a lot. He always gets a lot of pressures, but he actually only had 3.5 sacks last year.
So he shouldn't even be on the list.
Relax. Here's where I'm going with my rant, though. My boy Zach Ertz, last year, record-breaking catches. He had 116. That was the most by any tight end in history. 1,163 yards, 8 touchdowns. That's worth the number 40 spot on the NFL Top 100. He goes to 88 catches, big drop. 916 yards, big drop.
Yeah.
6 touchdowns, big drop. It's not really a big drop. That's a top tight end in football. He dropped 45 spots.
I think
45 spots? Are you kidding me?
To explain it, I think he should obviously have been higher.
It's
to explain it, it's because Kittle. Because Kittle
and
stole the
Kelsey.
spotlight. Obviously, him being on the top 10, I think is actually fitting because he's so dominant, and that he made it top 10, right?
Yeah, number 7, 8.
Yeah, so I think he is just a dominant player. I can understand why he was put that high, and I think that made people kind of forget about Ertz a little bit, which is ridiculous. But in how they vote in the top 10, it's like if you're going to put one tight end on there, you're putting Kittle or Kelsey, and then Ertz is right behind them. But then it's a huge drop-off after Ertz. Like, no, I don't think anyone really thinks that Waller or Andrews are.
It's 247-yard difference he had. He dropped 45 spots. Let's also not forget, Jason Peters, rated top 5 tackle in football last year. The guy's like 38 years old, not on the list. Brandon Brooks was rated the number 1 guard in football, and he's in the 90s. He's 98. He's the number 1 guard in football by PFF, 98. Jason Kelsey, 94, top 3 center in football. Where's Lane Johnson, top 5 right tackle in football? Not even on the list. I'm done.
I'm trying to help you, but I'm just saying, like, you guys only won 9 games last year.
Yeah, but we were in the playoffs. Why is Prescott on there? Why is Amari Cooper on there?
I mean, Amari Cooper kind of.
Why is all their linemen on there?
Because people like the Cowboys.
It's unfair. Get the Cowboys out of here. All right, my rant is over. The list is fine. It's not the end of the world. I just wanted to get my fired up rant going.
I mean, this is kind of why I don't really pay attention to these lists to begin with. Like, you're comparing different players of different positions and the hierarchy. It's fun to do and all, but like I don't know. Like it's all the same as what we probably do when it comes to rankings. Who do we like the most and put them on there?
Aaron Rodgers every time.
Yeah, I mean I'd be putting Russ up there every time.
So Aaron Rodgers have 4 more wins though.
Oh, got me.
I actually real quick, I think
Wentz should have been on the list. We all agree, correct?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Jared?
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually think the Breeze, Brady, Rodgers, 12, 14, 16, I actually think it kind of makes sense. I'm not going to sit here and argue that Rodgers hasn't not played as good the last couple of years. He obviously has taken a step back from the beginning of 2017 and 2016. And obviously, I think Drew Brees is up to regress, and obviously Tom Brady. And I think it makes sense. You could argue they should be lower, all three of those guys, or at least Brady and Rodgers. People will argue that. But because of their legacy, I think it makes sense for them to be right outside of the top 10, and to see if, Brees comes back strong, or if Rodgers in year 2 steps up, or Brady with the Bucs can do it, or if they'll fall even further.
For the few fans we have, as we start our very new podcast here, Get Back Guys, this is the beginning. I'm not slowing down. Philly's coming, and the list will be different next year because we're on the move. No more cheap shots, Seattle. I'm tired of playing you. We played every year, and I just need a break. We're playing this year again, and I just want a break because Kyle beats me every time. Kyle and Jared, Derek, all our buddies get together and they just throw water balloons at me and they beat me, and it just makes me so sad. They knock Wentz out. He cheap shotting him. They tear an old man Josh McCown's hamstring. I'm done with it. I want a break from playing you guys. There's no need. Let's go play the Falcons. We always beat them. Let's go play Minnesota. We like to beat them. So hot in this room we're filming in right now. I can't.
Honestly,
dying.
As a Packers fan, 2014 is hurtful, but I would love another opportunity to play Russ because Devante crushed you guys.
I'm telling you, Shaquille Griffin followed him that whole game. Anyway, that's a whole nother.
Well, and here's what I noticed right there. Nick welcomes the opportunity of playing Seattle again, and you're afraid of it. You don't want it.
No, I'm not afraid. I'm just tired. I'm just tired.
What happens?
Sometimes you need a break.
What happens when you play Seattle? It's inevitably you're gonna either
they'll throw a touchdown,
or they'll throw a pick and it'll be called a touchdown, or their quarterback will throw 4 interceptions and their defense will play the greatest game they've ever played, and you'll get an onside kick and lose. It's either Russell Wilson's come to Lambeau and he's gonna get crushed, or we go to Seattle and they pull off some BS and beat us. It makes me so mad.
This is why we started a podcast, Get Back Guys. This is why we did it, because we have too many Seattle fans, and there's such a history that is for some reason formed since we all got really into football with the Packers, Hawks, and the Eagles, and I'm sick and tired of it. Can we all go band together and go beat up the Jets? Come on.
Can I just say
Cowboys can't. Dak Prescott's on the list. He couldn't beat the Jets last year when Sam Darnold was hurt.
Sam Darnold hurt?
Yes.
Can I just say one thing about the Packers Seahawks? I cannot believe in 2014 when the Packers lose, that defensive performance. Case Keenum could have been the quarterback of the Seahawks. You guys would have won that game. With Aaron Rodgers as peak, that's how good the Legion of Boom was. Because Russ threw 4 interceptions at home, and you held Aaron Rodgers to 21 points. It's the one playoff performance that Aaron Rodgers has had where he hasn't just dominated in a loss, right? Against the Cardinals, he played great, and they still lost. That defensive performance, I wish the Legion of Boom was with the Packers, because that defense was so good, and I have nightmares about it.
And
that's on
Jets won the trade. We don't want you to come back. You're beating up on Nick and I. We're done with it. We're done. We're done with the water balloons you're throwing at me. I'm sick and tired of it.
We don't always beat up
for you.
We don't always beat up. We don't always beat up on Nick. We saw the playoffs this year. It's like you said.
True.
Lambeau is a house of horrors for us. It has been since. I don't think we've won there since 1999. I think that's true. The last. But
it's true.
Yeah, it tends to be you guys win at home and we win at home.
And I remember having a discussion with you, Alex, once. I think it was when we were still working together, and you said I'd love to see what happens when you guys play us in Philly, because up till that point we played in Seattle a lot. Well,
yeah, and you
we
won.
did it
I get it.
twice.
Throw the water balloon at me.
Josh McCown played the whole game.
I'm just tired. I just want Wentz to be healthy. Guys looking swole. And I just can we all Seahawks, Packers, Eagles, let's all just band up. Let's go beat up on the Cowboys. Go take out the Jets. Let's go take on teams. I'm picking teams that suck. But
let's be honest, though.
I was gonna say, beating on the Jets is like picking on that kid on the playground that has asthma. That's not cool.
That kid on the playground beat top 100's Dak Prescott. this year.
Well, the Cowboys are a whole different.
Let's be honest, though. None of this matters because the Patriots got Cam Newton, and they're going to be awesome for the rest of eternity.
Do they have any players left? They've all opted out.
But they'll sign Clowney, Matthews. They'll get the whole band together.
That's a terrifying thought.
And none of them matters.
Whatever happened to that guy Bill Belichick was scouting? Everybody's like, hey, he's not at the combine. What a great coach. Do you ever draft that guy?
I have no idea.
What happened?
Someone knows.
But
not us.
anyway,
sorry for the Seattle Packers 2014
Just
rant.
terror.
It never leaves my mind.
I'm
that
all
sadness.
in. I'm rooting for Seahawks. If I just join the love, maybe you'll just stop throwing water balloons at me.
Join the love.
Get the win this year.
Hey,
Jordan Love.
I don't have a problem with the Eagles or the Packers. I like both your teams.
You're right. You
just
hate the
hate-
Niners and the Cardinals and the Rams.
Hey, I don't
Toughest
hate the
division in football.
So I have a theory, and it might be wrong, but here's what I think. At least I do with the NFC West. You have your team that you respect but you hate. You have your team that you respect and you like, but you just wish they were there. And then you have your team you don't respect and you don't like at all.
Who is it for you?
Okay, so I respect the Rams, but I can't stand them. They play us tough every year. It's always a brutal game. I like the Cardinals. I just wish they didn't play in our division. I love Larry Fitzgerald. I would love to see them win a Super Bowl, but I can't bring myself to root openly for an NFC West team, and then I can't stand, nor do I respect the 49ers in the slightest.
I agree with that.
That's almost – your theory is so correct because that's how I hate the Cowboys, but I weirdly have a good time with Danny Dimes down there in New York. And the Redskins – or they're not the Redskins anymore. They're the football team. The football team. That's going to be tough, too, to get that mentally – just, because you're so used to saying it.
Yeah,
but that football team's just kind of there. They're just hanging out. And sometimes they beat us, but it's all right. They don't throw water balloons at me. So
I hate the Bears, but I also just kind of feel bad for them because could you imagine being a Bears fan in the last 20 years?
Taking shots at last week's guest.
But the Vikings are interesting because there's a few players in the Vikings I really like, and I think they have the second best or best helmets in the league. And the Lions I just don't care about because they're just not a threat as well.
They're just Lions.
It's going to be after Aaron leaves, my prestige of just getting to look down on franchises that don't have elite quarterback play is going to be tough. It's going to be a tough awakening.
Nah, no, but he's got Jordan Love.
Jordan Love's coming on in, ready to.
I hope so.
We'll be good. We'll be good. All right. Well, I guess that can wrap things up. I think
goodness, this room is so.
It's hot
so
in here.
warm
We got our rants out. I think maybe another
We're
episode will
gearing up.
change that.
Tune in, please keep tuning in because it's coming. It's going to continue to get
Oh, yeah.
worse as football gets.
Honestly, guys, it almost felt like a therapy session for Alex. Really, no.
It really.
I just
is.
see out the corner of my
just-
eye, just him shaking and just.
There's some stages of grief, and I've been through. I was angry for a little bit. Now I'm just sad, and I just want things to be better for my boys.
The next stage is acceptance. Then you'll be all right.
Hopefully, I'll accept it when we win a Super Bowl next year.
So yeah, Jared, thank you for joining us for this.
Thank you.
Give yourself a plug. What should people check out from you?
Yeah, thanks, guys, for having me. First off, it was a blast. I always love
Be back.
rattling about teams with you. But Justin Wright and I just started a podcast. We call ourselves the Expansion Buddies. It's because Justin's a Buccaneers fan. I'm a Seahawks fan. We were born the same year into the league, so thought that'd be a good name. Yeah, you can check us out on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, Google, everywhere there's Spotify or everywhere there's podcasts, you can find us. So
Links will be in the description. Sweet. Go check them out.
There we go.
Episode one is out now. We'll publish every Thursday.
Awesome. So yeah, thank you all for watching or listening wherever you're listening on podcasts. Please check us out. Like, subscribe, share. If you're on YouTube, please spread the word about us. Hopefully you like
Spotify and Apple as well. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, that's all right. And yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back next week.
Audio Jungle.